This is It Takes Two, which is simply put the best co-op game ever created. It's really quite interesting and honestly that good. So what we're getting here on Series X is a 4K resolution, 60 FPS, no HDR support, it does not have crossplay, and it is a cooperative only game. You have to play this with two players, whether you're doing that locally or online. There is a cool buddy pass system where I buy the game, and my friend just downloads it and they can jump in and play with me. They won't get achievements in that, but they can experience the story alongside me with the buddy pass, which is a great idea because you need another player. This also took me a bit longer to put together because, well, you need to have another player, which is a not a great thing for the solo people out there. But with that, this game is phenomenal. It is really truly quite a remarkable experience. So the gist of it is, you're these two parents, you've drifted apart, you guys are done, you got a daughter and she's noticing things and she's having a hard time with it. And through her sorrows and tears, as parents, you end up kind of being thrown into this scenario where you've become these like dolls that she made. She's actually an incredibly talented artist if she made these kind of clay things. Anyways, past that, you begin to explore this magical world, and you're sort of greeted by this crazy book. The book is so wild and over the top, but it's the Book of Love. And basically, the idea is that you're working as kind of a duo and rediscovering the love to a degree. Now, it could have handled some of the more dramatic elements of the story, because it kind of goes over the elements of like divorce and everything like that. It could have handled those a little bit more seriously, but at the same time, I think there's such a beautiful level of heart and care put into this in regards to the story, and it's sort of like a fun fantasy fairy tale that you experience over a range of different levels. And I did have more footage, but I had some issues with that anyways. So we've kind of got what we got here, and it's just sort of also funny, depending on who you play with, will determine how fast and everything that you move through the game. Whereas see here, I'm kind of waiting, and that's kind of a funny part is, you've got, depending on who you're playing with, really does change how you handle the situations. Now, this is a game that's really neat because it takes communication, it takes work and effort as a group in order to coordinate and survive. You're really the only as strong as your weakest link. Now, it is a linear game. You're moving through it in a very structured way, but you feel like you're in the real world. It's very beautiful. It's very well detailed. It's a gorgeous game. It feels very real, just in terms of the quality of like the texturing and the environments and some little fog details. This game was made with love, care, and attention, and it is remarkable. All there, and it's remarkable because of that. And it doesn't punish you for kind of failing and doing bad, because obviously in a co-op scenario, this is kind of like a perfect couples game, I would say, or something with a family member kind of working through this. I think you would have a lot of fun doing this game. It's challenging for sure at some moments, but it's so incredibly unique. And what makes this game so perfect is the fact that I love watching them fall down over and over. Anyways, what makes this game so perfect is the fact that every scenario is different. So every time, I think I took the controller and did that part there. Anyways, every single place in this game is different. Every challenge is unique. Every tool you have is completely separate from an existing tool. So each area, there's different chapters. So each chapter kind of has its own concept and what you're building towards. So you'll learn, kind of the base mechanics. It starts out simple, and then it gets more complex. And by the end of it, you're now in a new area with an entirely different mechanic. Obviously, it tests what you've learned with that mechanic in like a bit of a boss fight with some hilariously angry inanimate objects that you've been dealing with along the way. But it handles those so beautifully, and it's not like a difficult game, but it can be it depending on who you're playing with, obviously, too, right? But you look at, the bosses, and they make sense. All the puzzles, they make sense. There was only a couple times where you had to sit there and be like logically trying to break down what was happening. For the most part, you really can understand quite simply what you're doing, what your challenges are, and you can enjoy them quite well as a group. I found it so interesting that it had this like beautifully split co-op where you really are just kind of very focused on what you're doing. Normally split screen would kind of drive me crazy, but you know, the way they handle it here, the perspective switching, everything like that, it's really perfect for whatever scenario you're working through. And I think that's really special and really cool. I get knocked out here. Anyways, it's kind of funny, and it's such a unique and, again, heartwarming and generally charming experience as these two, you know, work together. They definitely dislike each other to a degree, and, you know, they've had issues, but they're struggling through this together for their daughter. And it's so heartbreaking. So the moments where the daughter comes in, tries to talk to the parent, and she thinks that they're just like ignoring her, but they're like human bodies are kind of stuck there, and you're in this, you know, fantasy world as their sentience, I guess you could say. It's just really, really interesting and dynamic, and they could have really, really went for like a gut-wrenching kind of thing in this, but I think they handled it fun with a sort of storybook-esque feeling to it. And like I said, nothing mechanics-wise is the same. One moment you're doing like a bit of a shooter scenario. The next you're moving tubes. Another one you're kind of solving puzzles. And, you know, other times you're grinding on rails or being grinded up in fans if you don't do things right. And sometimes you're battling giant sentient vacuums and toolboxes, or greeting weird inanimate objects that are alive, or chilling with the squirrels, or, you know, doing this huge range of different things. And again, every single time, no matter what area you go to, it's always different. It's always a unique challenge. It's always got something weird and fun and challenging to it. And you're never sure what's going to come next. You might learn a mechanic and be like, okay, I know what I'm doing the whole game, but then an entirely different sort of setup comes, and you're like, okay, well, we got to figure this out. We got to adjust our game plan. We got to get used to this. And I think that's really quite special, because most games would teach you mechanics, and they would build on those mechanics throughout an entire game. Whereas this one does its absolute best to always provide something unique for you to be working through. And I don't think I've seen many games that have such varied gameplay. It really is quite fascinating. And again, the different places you go are really cool too. The shed, the backyard, maybe a bit of a fantasy kingdom. You know, they've got all these different spots and places. And it's really, really interesting. And a little bit dark at times too. A little bit dark. But you know, it's got a fair balance. It's got fun surprises, twists and turns at every point, and it's got like a fun kind of lesson thing about romance and the book of love, and it's really, really charming. And like I said, perfect couples game, or again, even, you know, a parent-kid kind of setup might be fun, or, you know, anything like that, or friend and friend, and you can have a really good time working through this and enjoying, you know, the moments that these two characters have and across these crazy looking places. Like, it's quite grounded in the realms of reality, but it also goes a little bit further than that in regards to having some real magical type things, almost like a bit of a fairy tale is what I'm trying to get across in that regard. And it has like very fairy tale-esque properties to the story and the ways that the characters interact and deal with things. There's this more hardcore. It would almost be like a good plot for like a Pixar film, quite honestly, what I'm trying to think of, I would guess. But it's so interesting. And the way they split you up but keep you close together is really cool too, because you'll learn the different characters have different strengths, and you'll have to kind of deal with that kind of stuff. And it's really funny with some folks that just, you know, have like the hardest time understanding what you're doing. Whereas I'm like kind of rolling through things because I get like a perfect idea of stuff, right? Except for some of the puzzles where I'm like, you know, you have to sit there and think for a second, which is fine. That's an engaging part of a puzzle game, is having to sometimes think about that kind of stuff. But I just want to get across that this game really is a perfect co-op experience. I'm trying to think of other co-op games, and I can think of really fun ones that I've played throughout the years. But I've never played one this creative, this distinct, and this making you work together in a co-op game. Like most co-op games, it's like, oh, you can do co-op, but you just do single player. It's not the biggest deal in the world. But this one, you have to do co-op. And you have to work together. You have to coordinate. And I think that makes it a lot more special. Because there isn't really anything else like this. I guess their previous game where you're sort of escaping, jail and that might be kind of, similar to it to a degree. But it's not handled in the way that I think this one is. It really is quite a special and unique experience. Unlike anything I've seen in a cooperative game ever before. Like, we could sit there and be like, well, playing, like, Call of Duty Zombies in a group is fun. You get a couple people together, it's good. Doing an open world game and surviving together, that's fun. That's engaging. But this one really, really forces you to coordinate. Because when I'm looking at things like, like Call of Duty Zombies, I can play that by myself. And these are just some co-op examples. Or, an open world game, I can have a friend and that'll be fun. But I can also just play by myself. Or large multiplayer survival games, I can go off and do my own thing and they can do their own thing. This thing actively tries to keep you engaged with one another in what you're doing and how you're handling it. There's also fun mini games too, where you're directly like competing against one another. And I gotta say, like, the voice work and stuff for the two characters was also delightful. It really does work quite proficiently well for helping, provide this story. And I think there'll be a couple moments where you might feel a bit emotional about the characters and the situation they're dealing in. And you'll find funny spots. And you'll find spots where you might get mad at your partner, depending on their skill level. And you'll enjoy the challenge, and you'll feel like you succeeded well when you take on a certain enemy or some sort of opposing force. You'll have a good time. That's the biggest part of this, is the fact that, this game has good levels of entertainment to it. It's got a good story. And it's cool. It's fun. It's neat. It's different. It's charming. It's challenging. A little bit heartbreaking at times. And it wraps it all together in what's a really engaging, perfect co-op experience. I try to think of games that kind of match close to the level of the way this kind of has you, working and engaging with one another, and I can't think of anything like it. And it's something I'm very likely going to revisit for a long time down the road, because I think it is something that you can really have a grand time with while playing with another. It's so different. It's so cool. It's beautiful. It's well put together. I didn't notice any performance or anything like that issues. It just ran. I didn't have any times where I was like, oh, this is way too frustrating. Nope. It was easygoing and also challenging, and it had neat elements to it. That perfect balance. And I was just so shocked by this one, because I looked at it and I was like, oh, this looks kind of cool. This looks kind of fun. And then you get into it and you're like, wow, this is a remarkable experience. It's really unlike anything I've seen in gaming. And I play a lot of games, so to come out here and be like, this is such a true standout, I'm very, very serious that this is a game of the year caliber contender here, just due to how unique and special this game is. So generally, I gotta say bravo to the effort here. It's so nice that we're still getting such creative games this far in. And I know the gameplay of what you're seeing might not be too wild from what you've seen in other titles, but the way they use it and the way that you have to interact with it is what makes it special. And again, this is something I could see myself revisiting multiple times in the years to come, doing cooperative experiences with others, because it's really interesting and really engaging and really unique. And I've said some of those a few times through, but It Takes Two is a blast.
Something's coming!
Killer wasps! Give me a match here! think